We're still 3 minutes early, so.
Broadcast is live.
Cool.
But I don't see it yet, I'm sure.
Oh, says we're live. Says we've been live for 23 seconds. 14 people are watching. 27. Jesus.
I don't see anything yet, but I believe you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we can wait a little bit, let some people get on. It's going out. Hey,
No.
Everyone having a good time in quarantine so far? Have a good Easter? I just went to the grocery store. First, I went to Trader Joe's, and it looked like it was empty from the front. I kind of figured, grocery stores have calmed down. And go in, they're like, oh, the line's over there. And, oh, there's a line. It went from Selma all the way to Hollywood Boulevard to get in the entire block, around.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we went to Ralph's, and there was no line at all.
Crazy. I walked by Gelson's yesterday, and it was pretty long, but it's like they're deceptively long because everybody's 6 feet apart. You know what I mean? They're long, but not crazy.
That's what I felt at first when we started walking down the line. I'm like, okay, this is a long line.
Mm.
But all of the Easter candy was on sale, so I made a point to get hot tamale peeps.
Whoa! I have one of those. We'll have to do a hot one challenge.
70% off right now. Easter candy.
Hot ones challenge with those peeps.
With the peeps, that works.
Yeah, maybe that's like round one.
Oh, let's see some comments here. It's not 7 yet. For quarantine. That's funny. Yeah, got nothing else to comment on here. Sorry, guys.
Well, it is 7. Should we give it one more minute and then dive in?
Yeah. Let's do 7:02. We'll give them 2 minutes. The maple peeps are surprisingly good. I'm trying.
I just saw the John Oliver thing with he's going off on peeps. That was pretty funny.
That's hilarious, and that's actually what inspired my peeps. Did you see the first one? That was actually the second or third one he's done of those.
No, I didn't. In fact, I didn't even see all of the one that was just on. I just walked in and it was on, caught my eye. It was kind of funny. That death metal song.
They're fucking peeps. Peeps are not trash.
I actually always liked peeps, personally, when I was a kid.
Kevin, let's see that box of Tub Ring releases again. Well, for the thing, I did pull out the corresponding CDs for today. I got the regular Drake Equation, the Japanese one, and Promo Equation for visual. Didn't drop.
So, maybe it's not quite 7:02 yet, but I was trying to figure this out. Was there 3 different releases of Drake Equation? There was Bad News, there was Gods of Rock, and then did we print it up ourselves?
Yeah, we printed up our own on, I don't know if we said it was anything. If it said Unappealing Music on it.
Unappealing Music, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and then
there's actually 3 versions of it.
Yeah, I think I have all 3 of them. It got picked up, and that one said Diesel, Caroline, and then there was the Bad News pressing.
Yeah.
The Japanese.
Yeah, the Japan version, and yeah. Wow, well, that's kind of cool. That was like a factoid that I didn't know. I was found that researching the albums. I was like, whoa, yeah, that makes sense.
So 7:02, shall we start?
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy. we are going to do what a lot of people have been doing right now and have fun on the internet and chat with our friends. So we're going to go through each of our studio albums and go through a little introspective of each of them. First one today being Drake Equation. So let's start with song 1, shall we? Is there anything going into Drake Equation?
Yeah, why don't we explain? Could you explain the title to us?
Sure. Drake Equation. Frank Drake was a member of SETI. He started SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is a branch of NASA. And Frank Drake came up with an equation that if you plug in all the right numbers, it explains the odds of life on other planets. And hence, Drake Equation.
Very cool.
The title came from originally, before it became a running theme, if you remember this, I used to put weird names on my email or something different. And I had like Folie à Deux and a few different ones. And Drake Equation was one of them. And we were trying to think of a name for the album. And you said, why don't you do that thing that's on your name? Drake Equation.
I said that.
Yeah. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, you get some
I do remember the Folie à Deux, but I don't remember. That's interesting.
That is the birth of Drake Equation. We wrote and recorded it when we were still an unsigned band. So,
I was trying to remember, did we record it in 2000 and then it came out in 2001?
No, we recorded it in 99, early 99. It took a year to come out.
Yeah, and then it was out in 2000, and then the other printings must have been 2001, the Japanese release and the Invisible one or whatever.
We finished it. We had it done for a while before we put it out.
Yeah.
To my visual aids promo equation, we put that out to promote it a good 6 months before the album came out. We had it done and unmastered. So there is the origin of promo equation. Actually, the origin of promo equation is Trey Spruance of Mr. Bungle produced our album, and then he went back and was going on tour with Mr. Bungle on the Snowcore tour. So we figured what a great time to promote our new album that was produced by Trey, and we gave out copies of promo equation at their show.
I remember we stood outside the Riviera and handed out 500 of those after the Mr. Bungle concert, and that was kind of crazy. But I think it worked because I think a lot of people knew us in Chicago, at least, because of that little night of doing that.
Yeah.
So I got a couple of things to add just about the album in general. As Kevin mentioned, it was produced by Trey Spruance of Mr. Bungle, who was at the time probably a god to us. I mean, that was one of the coolest things on the planet to me, having our idol basically sleep on our couch for weeks while we recorded it. 2 different trips. Also, we recorded it in one trip of his, and then he went back on tour, came back, and then mixed it on another trip. And that was just so amazing for I think all of us. We were all big Bungle fans, of course. I'm just trying to think each one of our records we were in different musical places, what our tastes were. And I think I was thinking today for Drake, the 2 biggest influences, at least in my eyes, were Mr. Bungle and maybe Blue Meanies.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I don't know. I was listening to a lot of, obviously you're going to get the Bungle, but I think I was definitely listening to Self at the time, because I remember showing Self to Trey, and a lot of Jellyfish still. Jellyfish Spilt Milk I still play on rotation. It's such a great album. And those all came out around that time. Those were definite influences too.
And then, before we jump into song by song, I listened to the album twice today. And so I had a couple observations that maybe general observations that I'll point out. With a lot of our records, I told Kevin recently that it seems like his lyrics are really prophetic. There's all these things he's singing and talking about that were we recorded this in 1999, which means we probably wrote it in 98, 99. And he's singing about the web, ruling our lives, staying in your basement and never leaving and just being on the web, and AI and all these amazing kind of predictions. and it was like kind of just amazed me like how much of that stuff you were like in tune with all the way back then. It's like kind of incredible. And like I guess when we talk about specific songs, we'll point them out. But another thing I noticed, and I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, but you talk about in your lyrics a lot on this album. You bring up God.
Oh yeah,
that's on purpose. And it's cool. I guess I didn't really ever think of it at the time, but like as today I was listening to it, it was. I mean, none of us in the band were or are religious, but it's really cool on kind of thematically through the whole record. You're talking about God as a metaphor a lot of times for fate or nature or like an evolved man or like a subdued mind or hubris, and it's kind of like a cool thing that I guess I never even really got the first time.
Well, thank you. I actually had rules. I had if like something technology is mentioned, then in some line a deity has to be mentioned somehow, and I would like try to follow those. I didn't always, which kind of goes back to, I think we discussed this too, early songwriting. I always liked concept albums, but I didn't want to make a concept album, especially with every song being about a story and the next is a chapter in that. So I kind of more make themes and then do Monster of the Week episodes, so to speak. And those songs didn't necessarily have to fit in the theme, but I would make kind of an overarching theme for the album and then just try to keep those songs in there. So that was my Drake equation was somewhat autobiographical. Thank you. Just brought up religious, but then being very much into science and being a little guilty. I was a little guilty. I was brought up not crazy religious, but I went to church all the time. I think it just was more of a daycare maybe that my parents would send me to. So I'd go to classes at school and then classes at church, and that was fine. It was my friends from school were there. Some of the popular kids went, so I had kind of an in with the popular kids because we went to church together. But just one day I was kind of like, I don't believe any of this. Nothing bad happened. So I felt guilty for a while, and I let some of that come out in the lyrics of Drake Equation.
Cool. Well, let's dive in. First song. Where's
the Robots?
I remember.
I'm sure we're both going to have the same story where the song title came from.
Oh, go ahead.
So when we first finished Where's the Robots, we didn't have lyrics for it yet. I think we wrote it and we had some shows coming up, like 3 shows. Or maybe even we were doing it for a while and we were just singing different things every night, kind of making up things. And I think we even tossed around the idea of never actually writing lyrics to it and then singing something different every night and making it our live song. But one day we were supposed to play with Captured by Robots. Captured by Robots is a band, one of the members of Blue Meanies a long time ago. And he left and he made a band of robots and set them all up and digitize them. They play in the background and he sings over it. And his whole shtick is that supposedly these robots captured him and they're making him perform. Super cool. Rob introduced me to them. And we were supposed to play with them. We were all excited about it. But apparently one of his robots broke or he couldn't make the show or something. But we didn't know, even when we were on stage, we were still wondering if he was going to show. So that night for the lyrics, Rob started yelling, "Where's the robots? Where's the robots?" And I'm like, that's it. I'm going to write lyrics to that. So made it kind of a Frankenstein story. It's the only robot song, not in the point of view of the robot. It's more humanity saying, we're supposed to have robots by now. Where's the robots? And they are created, and life creates life. And that's
like the evolution of man for you, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And it was like, was it at this exact same time you were like really into that movie AI?
Yes.
Was that is that at the same time? Was that later?
It might have been. It might have been later.
Yeah.
It was definitely later. And I'll tell you what I took from AI. I wasn't so much into the movie AI. Fine movie and all. But when they originally showed the trailer for it, it said like summer 2001, big on the screen after it came. And in the summer 2001, on the movie trailer and the screen, there's these little notches in the letters, like summer, and you wouldn't. And if you counted the notches and put them all in, it was a phone number. And you call that phone number, and it sets you out to this weird page. And it became this whole ARG. And this was kind of arguably one of the first, which is basically you would mail, people would go places. This whole group of people were working on things to find these clues. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever. So that influenced me later on with like Zoo Hypothesis to put some hidden things on the page and try to make my own little thing. I was not a web designer, and there weren't a million people trying to figure out the puzzles, so I had to make them a lot easier, both for me and for not groups of people working on weird fractals and everything to figure it out. But yes, AI.
I think when I was listening to it, to me, it first of all, Mike's drumming in it is so amazing. It's like quintessential Mike Gilmore drumming. It's like this. It's insane. It's just awesome. And it's like it's amazing. And it just kind of, the whole song kind of summed up, I think, what like Tubring was at the time, and probably was a lot of times for his career. It's like this, cerebral lyrics, schizo, high intensity music. And it's like, it's a good first song for our first studio release. It kind of, we never really got away from a lot of like the force behind that song. That was kind of like, that went on throughout the whole discography, I think. And so, yeah, great tune. And I also wrote down, I remembered this, that we almost did our video for that song instead of Faster. It was like between those two, even though I don't know why we did
Bite the Wax Tadpole too.
I thought it was like between Faster and Robots, but Robots was so short. It's like, well, what's the point of having a music video that's a minute long? Anyway, so yeah, on to Bite the Wax Tadpole.
So to what I said before we went live, we've gotten through one song and we're 15 minutes into this.
I'm gonna make it streamlined. We might go.
We're gonna go over a half hour, but we'll streamline.
Sorry, everybody in advance.
Yeah, if you have plans at 7:30, sorry.
We'll try and keep it going.
Yeah. Okay, song 2, Bite the Wax Tadpole.
This one's awesome. The structure of it's insane. It's like anthem part, break, verse, chorus, transition, anthem, bridge. It's like I write a lot of songs still to this day, and like what were we thinking? Like, it's insane and kind of awesome. I think Jason's bass is like that distortion he has, and then I remember him playing that, and I was like, "Wow, that's amazing!" I was like, it's like the sound of that song, that cool. I remember that he had this little stomp box that made it, and it was an awesome sound, and it just fit that part so well. There's like this quintessential harmony you do in the chorus that's like the Kevin Gibson harmony, and like I don't know music theory good enough to know what you're doing there, but I like love it so much. Like you've got this one voice that goes like lower than the lead, which usually with harmonies you're going on top of them. It's so cool. That like guitar slide into the anthemic part that Mouse does, just like, it's got everything a rock song should have. It's just awesome. And then it was also funny because one thing I forgot to say in the beginning, this whole album was recorded 100% analog. So there was no Pro Tools, there's no digital recording. It was all done to tape. So like that in and of itself is totally insane. Like, it's like, I can't even imagine doing that these days. It's like such a different era for recording. But like, there's these samples in Tadpole. Like, there's this Pac-Man sound in the one part, and there's like a cell phone, and we had other samples on the record. And just like recording samples back then was like crazy. It was like holding your mic up to your the thing. It just reminded me of how like far we've come technologically with that kind of stuff, and it was kind of cool. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
What do I got? I got Bite the Wax Tadpole. If you don't know, came from a story which may or may not be 100% true about when Coca-Cola first went to China. They didn't know what they were going to call it, so they took the syllables Coca-Cola and made the Chinese symbols for them and put up billboards for it. But they translated it to something. It didn't translate as they thought, with sounds translated to words. So supposedly there were big billboards up that said "Bite the Wax Tadpole," which is what Coca-Cola translated to in Chinese. So
the song kind of is about human mistakes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like us, like you can explain it better, but that's
just making mistakes without doing your research first, just kind of jumping into it. Use that as a euphemism for that. What else do I have written? Whale. I have whale written on my notes, and I remember what that's about because I told this story on stage once at a show a long time ago, and once again you heard it. You went, "Oh, that's what Bite the Wax Tadpole's about." And it's not the whole song, but it was the one line. I worked with this girl who, not very bright. She was saying, I was just saying random facts like I like to do, and talking about we were talking about whales, and mentioned how the whale, the blue whale, is the largest mammal that's ever lived, bigger than even any dinosaur. It's this giant mammal. And this girl looked at me seriously. She's like, "Really?" Like, yeah. Like, "Do they know about that?" Hey, she's like, "Are they doing something about that?" Like, "Are they doing something about that? Killing all the whales because they're big?" So that a bit inspired the middle line.
That's so funny. Should we move on to Faster?
Let's do it.
Faster. That was like Jason came up with that bass line, and again, like I was like, "Whoa, that's amazing!" Then you got Mike's drumming on top of it. Like the two of them, Jason and Mike, in that song, like the music is just off the hook. It's just like the rhythm section of that song is just so great. I remember like always being bored of that later in our career, but like today I had to listen, and it was like such a fun song. Like I was like, "Wow, why was I bored of that?" That's like a great song.
We stopped playing it live because they're like, "Do Faster," but it's a decent one.
Great. It was fun.
It was hard for Jason. The bass on that was insane.
Yeah. That was. I remember when he played that a lot, like for us before he'd written the song. I was just like, that's quick picking. Like, who's doing that with a bass? It's just awesome. And then, this happens twice on this record. But I remember somebody saying to us, like, they were able to pass their science exam because they knew 186,282 from the song lyric, and so they were able to pass, and pi also in numbers. Our songs
warms my heart to hear. Warms my heart.
Pretty funny. I wanted to ask you about the metaphor. Like, it's a metaphor of like traffic being about anything that's slowing you down, right? Like,
yeah, it's actually, I think Timothy Leary said, he was asked before he died, he was asked if he was afraid of death, and he, being Timothy Leary, said, "Before you die, all the synapses in your brain are going to explode all at the same time, and through your own perception of life, that's going to be your own afterlife. That could last 1,000,000 years with all your synapses firing, and it could seem even in that nanosecond that you're living forever in that moment of death," because Timothy Leary liked to say things like that. So I thought that was cool. And then I thought about theory of relativity, where the faster you go, the slower time goes, even though it's at such a subatomic level, unless you're actually going to about the speed of light. So then I just mixed a few and figured even driving or running makes you a little tiny bit faster, so you'll get a little extra in that subatomic afterlife. And that's what Faster's about.
What does it mean when you say, "On the shoulders of God, I'll surpass regret"? What is that?
Shoulders of Gods is a phrase. Who said that? It was Galileo. Somebody said, I feel so bad saying this now. If I'm a great scientist, or if I've come up with things, it's only because I've stood on the shoulders of giants, as in people before him. So in me, now that I'm living forever, or the person in this Faster song, you're standing on the shoulders of gods. You've passed anything that makes you feel bad about the things that got you there.
The coolest lyric is, "The key is found inside my car." That's just brilliant.
Thank you.
That's just like the greatest, like, double meaning thing I've ever heard.
Thank you. I think the only note I had, you brought up the 186,282 miles per second. Well, I didn't know the speed of light offhand, so I had to look it up. And this is 99. So the internet was definitely not what the internet is now. In fact, I think I was doing some dial-up AOL, which hardly works. But I looked up speed of light. Nowadays, you could do that. You're going to find it on Google immediately. When I looked it up then, looking up speed of light in a search engine, which was probably Netscape or Yahoo, 4 articles came up. No answer. 4 articles, and that's it. And 2 of them had the same number, and 2 of them had different numbers. So 4 articles, there were 3 different speed of light miles per second. So I didn't know what to do, but
Good
2 of
thing you
them
got it
were
right.
so I'm like, I guess I'll just go with the 2 that are the same and hope it's right. And luckily, if you look it up now, it's 186,282 miles per second. But there was a small chance I could have gotten that fact wrong in a song, and then I would have felt really bad.
The other last thing I want to add, besides the amazing bass line and Mike's drumming in that song, the other coolest part is when you whisper, "I must go." Like, that's just that's awesome.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I gotta start complimenting you more. Sorry. My notes, I just started talking about me.
Go for it.
All right.
You're
a great songwriter and producer, Rob.
Thanks. Good food, happy family. You can start with that one.
I can't really. Actually I can. My note is, I think might have been the first time, and this has happened many times since, where you came in with a song with the title and like the first verse and said, I have this idea, go with it. And then I finished it up. Which is kind of, you take the fun part. I wrote a chorus and a verse. Now I figure out a second verse. But you did that on that, and then I guess it was just some weird. Didn't you take it from a Chinese food restaurant?
Yeah, it's funny because some Chinese restaurants have a dish called Happy Family, but yeah, I don't know. I just I was imagining. I think like this, like you can like subdue people into happiness by just filling their bellies, kind of like concept. I remember thinking when I heard it today how much it sounded like we were probably listening to Secret Chiefs 3 that whole week that we wrote that one. And I really like your Metallica reference in there.
Blackened in the end?
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then also there's the Band-Aid reference, Feed the World, again, which is also really brilliant to throw in a song about eating food and being subdued into, happiness. That's kind of hilarious. And then I noticed, I think it's in a couple of songs on this album, there's when I joined Tubbring, which was in 97, I think, they had this practice space, and they had all these they had boxes of weird percussion instruments, and because they were always experimenting with bringing weird stuff out on stage, and Kevin used to bring books and read from them on stage. So their practice space had all these weird odds and ends, and they had this Vibra-Slap there. And so I was new to the band, and I felt like I had to incorporate these things they had lying around there. And eventually, they made their way into a few of the recordings. And you got the Vibra-Slap in Good Food, Happy Family. And then I remember I bought little finger cymbals for the finger cymbal part that you played, and we had those. I still have those. I think I have those finger cymbals right here.
You bought a couple pairs. I remember the brass ones.
I don't even believe I still have these.
Wow.
This is these are 23 years old. Yeah. Hilarious. And they're right by me, of all places, right behind me in the studio.
Yeah, you didn't even say. I think they're buried somewhere. Wait, here you go.
They're on hand. All right, Bernard's.
Moving on. Bernard, Three Awakenings.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go? You want me to go?
Well, as in Kevin's genius foreshadowing, is this song about Westworld?
It's about Westworld. Yeah, I knew what was coming up.
You predicted 23 years in advance the entire plot of Westworld.
I have that superpower where I can look into the future, and I do it to find out what TV is going to be good 20 years from now. No, I think this is one of the very rare songs that I reverse engineered from a title. I don't know where I came up with Bernard's Three Awakenings. It wasn't based on anything, but I had the title first. And the Three Awakenings were, he wakes up and it's just another day and he's not really happy, doesn't know why. Goes drinking he's not happy in his life. He's with someone, goes drinking, drives afterwards, gets into a car accident, gets put into a coma. His second awakening is he wakes up from his coma, and his third awakening is realizing he doesn't want to be in his relationship and current life anymore.
What is the hangover part of it?
After a coma, after drinking and getting in an accident coma, it was kind of the atrophy of muscles would be the hangover there.
For me, I thought I was thinking about like the time in our lives that was, and we were in the suburbs of Chicago, and it's like pop punk was like the biggest thing on the planet then. That was like all the other bands in Chicago were doing pop punk, and pop punk was on the radio, and pop punk was on MTV, and pop punk, blah, blah, blah. And so I think like our kind of mentality with that song was kind of like, you know, we could come out on stage and trick people into thinking we're about to play a pop punk song for a second. And that was kind of the funny, ironic thing about the production and the putting together of that song, which like listening to today kind of felt kind of fun and nostalgic, and also fuck pop punk, like Jesus. What terrible. And then the other thing,
we used to have fun playing that live.
That was a fun song to play live. The other thing that's really cool, and I remember this specifically about the production of that, is so again, this was all recorded straight to 2-inch tape. Trey, the producer, Trey Spruance, was, while Mike was playing there's the part with the banjo that's playing, dun, 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 dun. Trey would take the tape head and slow it down and speed it up.
Oh, that's right. That was so cool.
Mike was trying to play to the rest of the band. And so what happens is when you listen to it back, the song stays unwarped, but Mike's drums get warped by this tape. And it's this effect in the song that if you didn't know it, you were looking for it, you might not even hear it there. But it's a really cool thing. And he does this thing with the cymbals where the tape head speeds up. And it's like actually probably the coolest production moment on the whole record, in my opinion. And I remember thinking like, Mike was a fucking champ for playing along as he was like speeding and slowing down the song. It was like the coolest thing. Like, and Mike did it so well. It was.
Didn't he do it like too good at first?
Yeah.
Like he didn't want to do it too much, but Mike kept playing along with it fine. He's like, all right, I gotta start really yanking these.
Mike is too good of a drummer. We gotta really like fuck with him on this. And yeah, he did it up. It was pretty cool. Numbers.
Yeah.
You want to
start? Sure. I actually don't really have too much to say about this. It's just a bunch of little vignettes of little stories I read. Rob and I used to be roommates. Remember, I used to have just a bookshelf of terrible books of random facts. Basically, it was the internet before the internet. Nothing that is actually intelligent, just random, stupid stories and facts, and I've always liked that. It's my bookshelf internet. And a lot of the verses on numbers are just from stories I would read about, like Fermat's last theorem. Do I have anything else written in my notes? I don't.
Fermat?
Fermat was not a mathematician, actually. He was what he was, but they found his notebook, and he says, I found the theorem to solve a certain equation, but there's not enough room in the margins of my notebook to write it down. So he never did it, and it got known as Fermat's last theorem. There was no proof for it, and it went on for a long, long time. And actually, it was just proven 15 years ago, 10 years ago. So after the song was written, it's just kind of a math puzzle that people like Fermat's last theorem.
And I discovered another thing in your lyrics here that I definitely would not have remembered unless I listened to it. Okay, you have a line that says, when I checked the net, I found I accumulated wealth. First of all, we call it net instead of web back those days, which is funny. But this is before digital banking, dude. Like, what? Where did you get that line from?
There must be digital banking. I mean, there must have been. Maybe not digital banking, but I was thinking checking the internet to see that you had more money.
I mean, this is 1999. Digital banking? Like, I did not have a digital bank account, or maybe it was like, I don't know. I thought it was another like prediction of the future on your end there.
We'll say it is. It was. I knew banks were coming to. There's a video on YouTube of an old 90s video, like an industrial, about the internet and what the internet's going to do. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty amazing that they're right about all that. A lot of those times, like, this new technology is going to do this, but it doesn't. The internet, they were 100% on with everything. Like, soon, and you probably remember hearing all that. Soon you'll do your banking and shopping and everything online. And it seemed weird, but here we are. Soon you won't be able to leave your house, and then you'll have to do everything online.
There's probably about 1 million notes on every instrument that are in the wrong key in that song, which, like, these days would never get past me, but back then, like, none of us really knew any better. But now listening to it, like, I thought it was gonna annoy me, but I really like it. Like, there's a lot of times where, like, I'm playing major and Jason will be playing minor, and then it'll switch, and then we'll be both major, and Mouse will be playing in minor, and it's actually pretty weird, but I guess that's kind of the awesomeness about when sometimes you don't know what you're doing. And then the other thing I was going to say is I really love the ending, the big Phil Spector wall of sound thing with all the different melodies in the song. That was like a pretty epic production point of the record.
And we spent a lot. That was probably the one we spent the most time on in the studio, wasn't it?
I don't remember, but I believe you.
Numbers.
Downloading Satan.
Downloading Satan. This one is a little prophetic.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's about downloading porn on your computer, and you get a virus, and the virus turns out to be Satan. And about that. The one thing that did not age as well is there's a line in it that says, "The late nights I spent loading JPEGs of sin." JPEG being a picture. You don't need to load JPEGs anymore. It'd be instant. You don't even need to load video anymore. That'll stream. But back then, going into the old net, you used to get a picture, and it would come about this much, then this much, then this much. And then you'd see a static picture of a naked person.
In your first line is been 11 days since I stepped outside my house, which I thought was like also, again, very prophetic. It's like this was before World of Warcraft by years. And it's like that wasn't a thing. People being binging like the internet like in 99. I mean, maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but that it feels like that came a few years later and you were talking about it then, which I don't know.
I already binged the internet a lot back then. I remember when they were first pushing like broadband internet, they were saying it's going to be so much faster than dial-up. And now that the internet's going to be faster, you won't have to spend as much time on the internet. They figure if you can get your stuff done fast, people then leave the internet right away. But the exact opposite happens. The faster you could use the internet, the longer you stayed on it, because you just see more and more and do more and more.
In the future?
Back to my bookshelf internet, I was reading about Criswell. At the time, I had not seen Plan 9 from Outer Space, but I just it was an interesting little biography on Criswell, so I wrote it about him. He's a fake psychic magician, kind of more of a performer. He would have crazy predictions. I think I mentioned a few of them in it. I can't remember them all right now. And I think it was funny because you caught the Plan 9, or you might have even put the samples or something in there. And I think back then I played it off like, yeah, that Criswell. But truthfully, I didn't know he was in there. I hadn't seen Plan 9 yet, and I should know my bad sci-fi. But now I have. So the song's about Criswell.
Is there like, what are the lines that are about, like, sometimes the lines sound like you're singing about a zombie apocalypse.
that was one of the things he was saying. I don't remember all the words. Let's check this out.
I also really like.
I'm reading that. Who does that? What is that? Read the lyrics.
That's pretty cool. I like in this song there's a part in it that we go into 7/4 time signature, which is pretty insane. That's kind of fun. There's like his again, Jason's bass is like so awesome in this. It's like this crazy heavy like this compression hitting it in the beginning. The production is like really cool. And I don't know like if there's any like key signature to this song. It's like so atonal. Like I don't even know what the hell we're playing. Like there's like nothing that really makes any sense, but it all kind of makes sense. It's kind of nuts.
All right. In the future. What's next?
No More Refills. I have a lot to say about this one.
Do you really?
My favorite song on the album.
Really?
Yes. Okay,
This
so
was before you were in the band, right?
I'll start it if I may.
Okay, yeah.
So I had nothing to do with the writing of this song. Tubbring had written this song before I was in the band, and this is actually like one of the songs they wrote that I was like kind of made me fall in love with them and want to be in the band. As soon as I joined the band, they were like, "Wow, we hate that song," and I'm like, "Are you guys nuts?" I was like, "This song is like one of my favorites." So we had CDs that came out before Drake that I guess we kind of in our eyes we consider them demos now. And so the one before Drake was Sci-Fi. They hated the song so much. It was written for Sci-Fi. They wouldn't put it on there. But then it came time for Drake, and we kind of needed one more song. I was like, guys, please put on No More Refills. I fucking love that song. To this day, I know they all hate it, but I like always loved it. And I was the one that convinced the band to put it on this record, even though you guys hated it. But it's an awesome song. I think the concept of like kicking a loafer out of a coffee shop that's like sitting there drinking and reading his philosophy books all night is the greatest concept to a song ever. It's got all these amazing like jazz bridges. It has about 1 trillion changes in the song. Like nothing ever repeats. It's like amazing. It's like the greatest song. And I would have probably played that live to the end of our touring days if anybody else would have let me. But everybody else hated this one. That's my spiel on that song.
That's a good spiel. And actually, I'm learning too, because before we started this, I looked over Drake Equation. I was going through each song and writing about it. When I got to No More Refills, my first thought was, why the fuck did we put this on this album? Now I know.
I made you guys put it on this. It was like, I don't get it. I still don't get it. It's like, even today listening, I was like, this is the best song on this record. It's so good.
Interesting.
It's got the vibra slap in there again. Good one. Well, we still disagree, apparently. I thought maybe you'd be like, I gave it a listen today and I changed my mind.
It's not the worst song on the album. The worst song on the album is the next song.
I agree with that. It is the worst song on the album.
I have a bit to say about this. I have a lot to say about things.
Please.
Someone wrote a comment once, or I've heard it a few times, that it's nice saying to us, they're like, wow, thanks, Tubbring, you guys have never written a bad song. And that's awesome, and it feels good, but yes, we have. And here's a good example.
I'm playing wrong notes all over that fucking song. I was like, I'm listening today. I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, I think Jason had kind of a cool bass riff, and then
the song necessarily wasn't bad. I fucking hate the lyrics I put to it. They're so dumb.
Is it about male prostitution?
Yeah. I think the elevator pitch in my head, although a lot of times change after I start writing, was a guy that is seeing a prostitute. He's a regular of a prostitute. He pays her. And of course, he then falls in love with her and he's sure that she's in love with him, but he doesn't have enough money to keep paying to visit this prostitute. So he starts prostituting himself so he can make money to visit said prostitute. And he's new at this. Hence, he's the amateur. She's the pro being professional and also prostitute. I thought it was clever at the time. It's not.
Stick with the science songs, Gibson.
Yeah. Well, going over, I went through. There's going to be a few of this as we go through the albums where I tried to do some. At least I'm trying. I mean,
at least you're trying. I give you that. You're trying.
You gotta try different things, and sometimes you fail. But
there's a funny joke about the song because we could have also just printed the lyric "she's a pronoun." That would have been more clever, perhaps.
She's a pronoun. Weren't you singing that in the back? Because you were going, she's the pro now, but then you started doing pronoun. You thought it was funny. You're like, no one's ever going to know anymore.
Probably. Yeah. That sounds like a pretty funny joke still.
Yeah.
So the final actual song on the album, God Hates Astronauts.
This is another song you brought. You came up with the title in the first verse and then kind of finished the second. And yeah. What do you have to say about that?
It's a fun concept, and then you wrote the rest of the lyrics, and it's about kind of like man trying to become God and then failing, right?
Yeah. Fitting the theme of the album as we discussed in the beginning. I remember your original first line for it was "Year is 1984, and it's a miracle you're back for more," showing that 1984 the rocket's going into space and God sees it and gets pissed off and destroys it. But then you realize the Columbia happened in 85. So you changed it to years 1985, and it's
the Columbia or the Challenger?
Did I say Columbia or Challenger?
You said Columbia, but the sample in the song says Columbia. But it's
right.
I'm not mistaken.
We even had a bit. Yeah, it's the Challenger, definitely. But you wanted to reference that year, so you changed the lyric to the years 1985, and it's a miracle you're still alive.
I'm gonna Google this real quick because now I'm tripping myself up.
Well.
I remember
both lyrics. I don't know why I remember that one lyric that we didn't use from 20 years ago, but that was your original line.
So the Challenger crashed in 1986.
Wow. So I guess you couldn't think of anything that rhymed with six. So
I remember actually this whole change.
Yeah, I remember this too, and why we did 85.
We liked the line "Year is 1985." And then we go, well, you could say it's a miracle you're still alive, as in we're going to kill you next year.
Yeah.
In 86. So
you're 84 and you're back for more. Maybe just
I don't remember that, but I like it.
And that's kind of it.
That concludes it. Yeah. I mean, there's a hidden track that our guitarist Mouse made at the end, which I don't know how much there is to say about it. It was, hidden tracks in themselves is kind of a funny, antiquated thing at this point.
You could hide your hidden MP3 on your downloaded album. Let's see. Comment on it. I was going to say something. We've had this discussion about Drake Equation as a whole. I don't think if we were to record Drake Equation today, it would definitely sound different. There's a lot of things on there that we wouldn't do. I might hear some things like, I wouldn't do that. But there's something to be said about that point of a band, like that snapshot of where you're at. And totally. It's, even though there's some choices we made that I might not have done, I like that it's a snapshot of us at that point.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a more of an overall attitude about music and movies and stuff that I always have. It's like, it is what it is in that time period. You know what I mean? I always get frustrated by artists like, I've been working on this album for 20 years. It's like, just put it out. This is like, let it be what it is.
Then, yeah.
And that's what it
is. A fatalist view of any kind of art. Like, well, I have this art. I got to hold on to it and not put it out. Put it out. If it doesn't do anything, do another thing.
Yeah. And then, I had this little note at the top. The album cover is done by one of the guys that did the graphics for that video game Golden Tee Golf. Another fun fact. If you guys all remember that bar game with the little, the guy that did a lot of the graphics for that, he's the one that did the front cover. Or, I'm sure there were probably 50 people that did.
I remember you and I going to the arcade or just being by Golden Tee and waiting for the credits so we could see his name. He is on it.
All right. Well, so those are our memories. Should we take if anybody has any questions or?
I haven't been reading all your comments as this has been going. Sorry, but start writing now. There's a bit of a delay, so.
Yeah, we'll try and answer them as they come. Fire away. We're behind you for a little bit, so.
one of you two convinced me to buy Drake Equation over Fermi Paradox many years ago at your merch table because you liked it better. Might have been me. I think when we first released Fermi, I liked Drake a little more, but it might not have been. I don't hate Fermi, so it might have been me though. Someone was asked if someone was at our table and like, what should I get? What kind of music do you like? If they at that point maybe like something a little heavier, weirder, I would have said Drake. Why did OCD not make the cut? Because it wasn't a good song. And now you know why no more refills made the cut. Because Robin did it. Foxy Shazam is coming back. Yes, they are. Oh, so many questions. I can't read them in time. Sorry.
How would you rank this album among your others? For me, it's like, I mean, it's fun. Again, it is what it is at that time. I haven't listened to it in 15 years, probably till today. Yeah, it's fun. It was a fun listen. I don't know. When I rank them, I tend to like the stuff that we did more currently, even though that might not be what other people like. So it doesn't rank towards the top.
I rank it fourth. I'll go through each album ranking, I guess. Although there's two I can go back and forth on, but I think it would be an objective of our own band. Okay, I haven't been reading any questions. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see how many.
So they ask about, Vince asks, how do we react to, oh my God, Mr. Bungle Association? Back then it used to annoy us, and how do we feel about it now? I don't know.
My take on that is that the proof's in the pudding. We were definitely influenced by Bungle back then, but we were also influenced by hundreds of bands. And not to speak for Rob, but I know him and I both just constantly listen to music, and both of us can chat about every style of music for a long time. So yeah, we were going through a Bungle phase then, and 20 years later, I don't know. Do you still think we sound like Bungle? I haven't really listened to Bungle since the last concert, actually. So I guess in the last year that was kind of fun. But yeah, they're a big influence, just like many, many, many bands.
Raleigh wants to know why there are all the death metal growls on there and not on the other records. Is it just youthful energy? I think it was like back in Drake, it was really important for us to try and throw in as many genres as we could in a song. And we like to do that as we went on. But I think on Drake, it was like, we got to make sure we touch upon 4 or 5 genres in every song. It was almost like kind of like our goal back then. And so maybe that's where the death metal growls. None of us listened to death metal. So I don't know what it was.
Do you know where the death metal growls came from? There is an answer for that.
Huh.
I'm more of a screamer and a shouter. Mike Gilmore's the death metal growler. He did those death metal growls. Hence, he left the band after Drake Equation.
Somebody asked if we miss Olive Garden. I certainly don't. But I went there out of an irony, like last year, to eat, and it was fun. It brought back memories. Do we still have a wall of clocks? No, Kevin and I used to live together, and we had a whole big wall with like 50 or 70 clocks. We don't live together anymore, and I don't know what happened to those clocks. Probably garbage.
I think we kept 1 or 2 of them, threw the rest away. Like the ones that we liked, we each took a clock for our respective apartments.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, were you into mindless self-indulgence at this time?
Was I? No, at this point, I probably had never heard of mindless self-indulgence. I know we started listening to them maybe in like 2001 or 2, maybe.
Yeah.
Kevin got into them before I did, for sure, and then turned me on to them.
You guys hate the Warehouse. How much did you hate the 49.5 steps? Wasn't there, sorry, I'll say the question out loud. I'm mumbling. What did you guys think of playing at the Warehouse? And how much did you hate the 49.5 steps? Wasn't there a band out there in La Crosse? They were called like 32 or 38 steps. And it was the amount of steps at the Warehouse in La Crosse, which I thought was kind of funny for their band name.
Which songs on Drake evolved or changed the most from the studio versions to playing live? I think we were pretty faithful, like trying to do what we do live in the studio and vice versa. I don't think we had enough energy to make them too different. The one exception being on the next record with -1, where we started like trying to do totally different things with that. Somebody wants to know what kind of wine I'm drinking right now. It's probably a Cabernet.
I think we're getting different, or maybe you're going.
On my phone, I got like a totally different thing than I got on my computer. So.
Oh yeah. That's why you're way ahead of me.
Yeah, definitely gonna. If you see any, just go them out. I might also be looking from the beginning too. How was touring during this record? Touring was cool. I mean, on Drake, did we tour with the Guar girl Slimenstra?
Yeah.
And we went coast to coast with Stratosphere and Slimenstra from Guar on this record, and that was cool. I mean, like we were all just probably out of like school, and it was like the first time we were seeing the country. It was awesome. I mean, nobody came to any of the shows, but that would continue for years and years later as well. So that was an early way of getting used to that.
And then right after, like, yeah, we were starting off the band. We had no money. Nobody's really coming to the shows. We're not getting paid, but we'd sleep on floors and do whatever. Right after a few tours, when we had no money, we went straight to Japan and did the Japanese tour, and just we were so broke out there.
I'm trying to if I haven't answered your question and it's a really important one, just ask it again, I guess. I'm trying to keep any of our answers just strictly about Drake Equation, not as much on the other things. Like, are we?
You still in touch with Mike from Daiquiri?
So me and Kevin live like 10, 50 yards apart from each other now, and Mike from Daiquiri lives like about a mile from us, and we all hang out all the time, and it's great. Let's see. Do you think we would have been a different band if we formed somewhere besides Chicago? That's an interesting question.
It is.
I mean,
how far do you want to go into that? I would be a different person if I was raised somewhere different. Not good or bad. It's just nature versus nurture.
I think we were lucky, though, because Chicago had so much cool music happening. Like we talked about the Blue Meanies earlier, Annihilate, and all these cool like punk bands. We used to like the Baltimores, people that ended up playing on our album. So like from an inspiration standpoint, we were lucky because, we didn't live like in a place without culture, so I guess we're exposed to a lot of cool stuff.
You know what? I guess actually it did change the band a lot because we couldn't have been kind of the road dogs that we were at first if we weren't like being centrally located. It was easy to start in Chicago and just kind of spiral out and get bigger and bigger and play cities. But if we like started out in California, you could do the West Coast, but getting over the flyover states, those are like 14, 15-hour drives. We wouldn't have been able to do that as much as we did later on.
What did we learn from Trey that we used on our other albums?
That's a good question, but I don't know if there's any answer. Anything you...
I remember being inspired by watching him work. We would get to the studio at, I don't know, like noon, and we would stay there for 10, 11, 12 hours. And the dude would not have a single bite to eat or even get up to go pee the whole time. Like literally, this is no exaggeration. And I was just like, this guy, he gets in the zone and he's a beast. And I think I kind of always like, that was like inspiring to me. I was like, I don't know. I think I'd probably want to take bathroom breaks, but it's just the focus is something I aspire to. And maybe that's something that rubbed off on us.
When you recorded Drake Equation, did you already know your next album would be called Fermi Paradox, or did that come later? That came at the same exact time. I said earlier how Drake Equation, it was one of my email names, and Rob said use that. And as soon as he said that, I then thought, well, then the next album's going to be Fermi Paradox. And there you go. So yes, same time. It was planned at that time.
Are there B-sides from Drake Equation?
Yes, there's the one we get all the time as the joke, even though it's not recorded. Golden Calf.
No. That was after Drake for sure.
Was it?
Yeah, for sure. Because I remember Marcus learning that song or hearing that song. I don't know. It was
What
later.
were you going to record it for then? Seems like it would fit in the whatever. That was a weird thing for us to actually write a song, complete it, have lyrics to it, play it out, and just drop it immediately. We shouldn't get to that far. We would drop a song a lot faster than getting to that point.
Somebody said that the sticker on Drake Equation literally said produced by Trey Spruance and Mr. Bungle. Is that something we were cool with, or is that something the label pushed? Like, we wanted to milk that shit for all it's worth. That was probably totally us doing that. You gotta like sell records any way you can.
If you're wondering what that sticker looks like, there you go. Oops. There it is.
Oh, cool! You actually have it.
I do.
Wow.
There were a few different pressings of the actual CD. I'm realizing it now, looking at it. Like, I think this is the CD we released, just black and gold on there. But the R pressing, and also, oh shit, I don't have it. Had yellow. It was black and yellow. So I don't know if those are still out.
Black and yellow.
Black and yellow.
I think I'm caught up on questions. Sorry if I skipped your question. It's probably because it wasn't really about Drake Equation, and I don't want to like talk all night and talk about are we going to tour or make another records. I want to kind of keep each of these nights, since we're doing fucking 6 of them. Like, I don't know how Kevin feels, but just kind of like to the point. You know, if you want to
talk for hours, actually.
Say what?
I just want to talk for hours.
But I think we're caught up. Unless I missed any of the questions, get them in now. If you want to talk about Drake, maybe you've got like a couple more minutes.
On tracks like No More Refills, how did you figure out how to sing over the insane music, tempo changes, etc.? I don't know. I don't just do it. Hopefully it turned out well. Everything's just learning and experimenting, especially at that point. Hear more to that story? Amy Elizabeth, Kevin, years ago you said you sold a lot of your old Mr. Bungle merch to afford Trey to produce the album. Is there any more to that story? No, that's pretty much the story. We recorded Drake Equation on our own budget, and we were all working, and we came up with a total that it was going to cost, which is so insane how much recording cost back then, or you can do it on a computer now. So we all had a lot of money to put in, and we all worked and saved. And one of the things I did to make a little extra money, I collected a lot of old Mr. Bungle memorabilia at that point, and I put it all up on eBay, and then used that money to help get Trey to produce it. And I figured that was a cooler thing to say than I have this rare Mr. Bungle shirt. I can say I had an album produced by Trey.
Our mutual friend Allie asked, did we record with the same energy that we performed with? And that's a funny question, because that was always a thing. People would say like, oh, your live shows are like better than your records. And I always wanted it to be kind of the opposite. I wanted our records to sound just amazing. Like, it's hard to capture energy, especially like really intense energy. Tumbling was really about energy, like intense energy. At least in my mind, that's what I was always going for. It's so hard to capture that in a studio. I mean, it's very tough. We tried, and if our live shows were immensely better than our records, sorry, we fucked up. We tried every time. It was like, there was always a thing. There was always a question, like, how do we capture it better? But it's like
the problem with that was live, we're jumping around and smashing stuff and doing whatever. But if you listen to the song, like an actual audio recording, it didn't sound better than the albums. I didn't think it did. It was just the energy that was there, and it's not like you can. I always liked the albums and the live shows being kind of a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that looks like all the... Okay, somebody said the themes on this album, like robots, started. Was that intentional? Were you thinking ahead, like, I'm going to make sequels to this robot song, or?
Yeah, actually. Not this is going to be done, and then next album I'm going to do another song with the next thing. But I guess I was always thinking a follow-up, and if it happens, it happens.
I guess Kevin said earlier, you know, he kind of likes the idea of concept records and like themes that like kind of span. So I think, yeah, in a loose way from me.
Yeah, exactly. In a loose way is a perfect way to put it. Not like, yes, this song, and now there's going to be a sequel here. It was more, well, there's places to go with this. I'll explore it on the next album.
Shall we leave it with that, and we'll talk about the next album tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night?
Cool.
Yeah. An hour. An hour's not bad. We said a half hour? Do about an hour?
It's not too bad, and I feel like we fielded the questions well. So tomorrow night at 7 PST, we will be discussing Fermi Paradox, our second studio record, and we're going to try and do it kind of the same way we did tonight.
Thanks for coming. Hopefully you had a good time. Stay safe and healthy. Anything else to add, Rob? No, you said bye.
See you
all right. Well, thank you very much. See you tomorrow.